Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this budget proposal. Mr. Speaker, this budget proposal spends $1.5+ billion more than last year's budget. It increases spending by 4.8%, increases spending up to a $31.55, $31.6 billion budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, increasing spending at this rate, which is approximately five times above the rate of inflation and population growth, Mr. Speaker, is not a budget that displays good stewardship to the people of this state, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the majority of people that I've been hearing from expect government to live within its means. And I know many of us last year heard those types of comments made during the budget debate last year, that government can't spend what it don't have. I think it was even repeated last year. Government can't spend what it don't have. And Mr. Speaker, this year, this government, this state government, this General Assembly, this chamber of the General Assembly is proposing to spend over $1 billion more, over $1 billion more than we have coming into the state, Mr. Speaker, which was the reason for the previous vote to expand gambling in the state to provide additional revenue to try and fund this budget. The cigarette tax that's being proposed to fund this budget still hasn't been brought up for a vote, and that's still expected to try and generate the revenue from that to pay for this budget, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, this budget here tonight that's being proposed is proposing to do just what so many of us railed against last year, and that is to spend what we don't have. Families aren't able to do that, Mr. Speaker. Individual taxpayers aren't able to spend more than they have. If they do, they find themselves in bankruptcy. When government spends what it doesn't have, it sends the bill to the taxpayer. And whether there's broad-based tax increases or not, Mr. Speaker, this proposal here before us today increases the level of spending, increases the appetite of state government for state taxpayer dollars, and will set a new floor for us in next year's budget negotiations that will be $1.5 billion higher than the past year's budget, Mr. Speaker. The floor. And as we know, the sky is the limit for the current administration, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the governor wanted to increase taxes by $4.7 billion last year, $2.7 billion this year. Now this current budget doesn't allow him to do that, but he's still going to get his tax increases in the form of cigarette tax increases as is being proposed to fund this budget, Mr. Speaker, or maybe something else that comes out of left field, because it sure wouldn't come out of the right field. But Mr. Speaker, we need to rein in the excesses of government because of the people of Pennsylvania. And I'd asked many over Facebook this evening what they thought about the budget proposal. And some of them, I asked them if they opposed the budget as I do. June says she's opposed. Rob says, yes, I oppose the increase. Linda Cooper says, Mike says, frankly, I oppose the current administration as a whole. Sherry says, I absolutely oppose it. Michelle says, this is unbelievable. Jake says, oppose. Craig says, oppose. Please make sure to inform one of his rep that it should be opposed. Another, Karen, says, yes, I oppose it. Mike says, definitely. Mr. Speaker, the taxpayers of Pennsylvania cannot afford to pay for the budget that's being proposed here today. I know the appropriations chairman had mentioned that he was taking the middle of the road. Well, Mr. Speaker, we all know what happens when you get in the middle of the road. You normally get in an accident. And this proposal is setting us up for a major economic accident, but it won't be by accident. It'll be by the willful choice of the General Assembly to put Wolf in a position to call for more taxes broad-based next year, Mr. Speaker. I ask for a no vote.